racetrack in St. Johnsbury, and they kind of copied that racetrack. And
The one we went to?
yes, that was before.
And what track was that one?
Northeastern Speedway, the one we went to a couple weeks ago.
And they still operate?
No,
No.
you can have one event a year there.
Yeah.
And he allows us. We have a group of these old cars that come in, and we go around the racetrack.
So they actually keep the condition of the track up?
He found it in his backyard, and there's great big holes in the racetrack like that where the trees were going.
It's pretty beat. Look at the chips on my car.
Yeah.
Stones on the tire.
So he restored it somewhat?
Somewhat.
He's trying.
He found it, and my God, there's an old race, and the wall is there.
In his backyard?
Well, yeah.
He didn't know it was there? What a piece of history. Who's that?
It was
Who
the
owns
very
it now?
first track in Vermont, wasn't it?
No, there was a lot more of them. There was 32 tracks in the state of Vermont at one time.
There's one in Westford, right?
No, Westford,
Oh.
Morrisville.
So 32 tracks had to have been a combination of dirt.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely all dirt. And there's some old movies. Did you ever go into the old schoolhouse here in town, and they had a whole bunch of uniforms from Bobby Dragon? And
I did not.
you should have, because they had some old movies of the racetrack in Northfield.
And who has those?
Probably there was a woman called Amanda, and it's Vermont Historical Society.
So they may still have them.
Oh, definitely.
So
They
it's
were
part of the
wonderful old
historical.
movies. And they're gone now.
Society.
They picked it up and moved it out.
Oh.
I would call, if he was really interested, call Lloyd Hutchins, because he could give you all the answers, because he was involved in that, setting that up. And they raced on Sundays, and the railroad track was so close that if they rolled over off in the track, they had to get the car off the tracks because the damn train.
Now you both got started racing. I know your dad was a champion down in Massachusetts and ran the Springfield tracks, ran New Hampshire, Riverside Park. And he's down in the New England Hall of Fame there, the Northeastern Antique Races Hall of Fame. And so you grew up around the track because you and your dad you were racing all the time. Was it the same for you?
No, it wasn't. My father hated it, scared to death of it. And I'd beg him to go to the racetrack, and he wouldn't go.
And you again are?
John Adams.
John Adams. Jerry Humiston. And you started racing?
Early 90s, whenever we was...
I started in 89.
Yeah. What happened was I drove the Enduro once. And so they come up with this new division, which was cheap. And so I said, why the hell not? And we had a lot of fun. Jerry and Mike Rollins, and who were those other guys we raced with? 12 or 15 of us. Best of buddies in the pits. They'd give you anything. But out there,
Gonna give you a shove.
Oh yeah, more than once. Mike Rollins will tell you stories about me putting him over the bank. I tell him he's a liar. A good story with Frenchie LaFountain. You know Frenchie? One night he was in my way, and I popped him 2 or 3 times and blew him off the track. So after the race, he come up and he says, "You son of a bitch, Adams." He says, "You knocked me off the track." And I said, "Frenchie, it wasn't me. It was that guy behind me pushing me." He says, "We'll see about that." And he was bad. And I was sitting on my trailer drinking a beer. Next week, he come back, and he was all calm, and he says, "The liar, Adams." He says, "I watched the film of that race, and there was nobody on your head." I said, "Yeah, Frenchie, I had to tell you something. You was mad." And so I did, and it was Frenchie got over it, and the poor guy's dead now. And that was my story about Frenchie the Fountain.
Nice.
And he was a good guy too. Yeah.
So tell me about your car. How you found your car? You found Bobby Dragon's car.
Yeah, in the bushes down in Charlotte. It was at an estate sale. And when we drug it out, it was full of acorns and weeds, because it sat there for 30 years. And my God, it had a 71 on it, number 71. So I said, Bobby Dragon car. So I went.
And you knew that from going to the races?
Oh yeah, I'd seen it around.
Yeah.
So that's where it started.
And you didn't know it was there?
No.
Just fate had you marry this thing?
Out it came. I got a couple rims on the back of the original rims that were on. It's really not safe, but it's hard to find those rims. They're rotten.
Walk us through your car.
Right up to the dash with acorns and squirrels, and I found parts and pieces in there. And
So the critters used this as home base for a while.
yeah. Actually, I patched some of the floors. See, I got a patch there because it was all rotten. and I patched it back there, and it was all rotten in that floor.
So this car with this driver, Bobby driving, competitive car in its day.
Yes. Yeah, it's a fun running car now.
And so this thing took him to several finishes.
Yep.
And did he win some titles with this car?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
He won some races. We're all a member of the NEAR, New England Antique Racers, and we race these. We put a show on in certain racetracks, and we have to have special safety equipment in them. And this here's the fuel shut off, and that one's the electrical shut off, so that when the safety crew come up, they can fix it. And what happens is we're all old guys, and sometimes we have heart attacks, and sometimes we pass out, and there is problems. We have had the throttle stick before, and guy went over an embankment and got kind of hurt because his throttle was stuck. So you can't have a throttle rod that's pieced together like this. You can see when it goes through the hole.
Yeah.
What happens is sometimes it's going to drop down, and so they make sure that you've got double springs on your carburetor so that it pulls this way and it pulls that way. So there is a lot of safety stuff concerning it. Yeah. But it's a fun car.
You've had this for how long now?
2 years.
2 years. Good.
Yeah.
Let's pop the hood. Let's see what's underneath this thing. So this is a tube chassis.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's all made with that the 2x2 tubing down there, and then they put the roll cage on top of it.
And you were fortunate enough to find a crate motor for it.
No, Brian over here sold me the motor.
Racing, it's a rough gig.
You see the extension on the power steering thing?
Yes.
When you really put high RPM, 6,500, 7,000 RPMs, the fluid blows out of the power steering. So you have to do little things like that so you don't blow the power steering out. It's either that or put a small pulley down here so that it slows it up.
So this is a great piece of history.
It is. It is.
You know, I'm happy you dug it out of the bushes because
actually, there was so much crap on it that the hood was bowed in like this. It was sunk down, and there was that much crap on it, and that's why I put these on it, so that it would put the hood back to where it should be or close to it.
Yeah. So the last time that Bobby drove this car, when would that have been?
Last summer.
Well, competitively.
Probably early 80s.
Early 80s. And so then he came over to one of the antique races, got in the vehicle.
They had a special show up to Groveton, and they honored his brother, Dave Dion, and Bobby Dragon. And so they wanted the cars there, and all three of the guys were there doing autographs.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great.
So you got his autograph on the car?
Right up there. So it's not like a magic marker, it's an ink.
Okay.
Yeah,
now this car would have been built in Vermont originally?
Yeah, there's a guy by the name of Steve Minton. He was around in Milton or somewhere, and he actually built them in his garage where he lived.
Wow. In the motors, he was building the motors for Bobby, or was?
No, there's a lot of places where you can buy motors, but now they're restricted to so much horsepower, and what they do is you have to buy a crate engine and they seal it so that you can't get into it, because racers are cheaters. That's what they would do. So everything is, they got wire. But now what they do with the chemicals is the wire through the nut, they cut it, and then they take it apart, and then they put the wire back together with super glue. Isn't that something? And that's stupid with super glue. And so they get away with stupid stuff like that. That's kind of the fun of racing. We had a lot of fun with Jerry and that group of guys. There was no money involved, very little. And like I told you before, we were all best of friends in the pit, but boy, when it come time to get on a racetrack, he was an enemy.
So this was a vehicle that was running in the 70s?
50s and 60s.
50s and 60s is when your dad started running. And so your dad has got down in New England Hall of Fame. He's got a place down there forever because he was recognized as obviously a successful competitive driver.
Yeah.
In his division. Cool. So your dad had a crew. He was just not a one-man show, right?
Oh, yeah, the whole thing.
So guys that come over every day, every night, help put this thing together. All is involved with New England Antique Racers,
Right. Yeah.
with Lloyd Hutchins. Now, are you on the board?
No, Lloyd is actually our northern board member, so he's keeping the club up this way.
Nice.
So it used to be just down in Massachusetts, Connecticut.
And so you're from this community.
I'm
So
from
you-
Barry. I
you-
grew up in Barry. I was a race fan. I went to Thunder Road in 1960 and saw my hero, Harold Hannaford and Ronnie Marvin, run the Coupes.
And so they were some of the first drivers
Oh yeah,
that run here at Thunder Road.
They were. Harold, I got to know Harold before he passed. He was 89 years old when he died. Well, a year ago this past March. And he was a great friend. He actually drove the car in some of our races. We built this car together after I made an attempt to put it together and make it look something like it did. But him and I did it like he did back in '62 when he built this car.
So this is a replica. It's not.
No,
not.
this is the real car.
This is his car.
Yeah.
This
yeah.
was his car.
It was
at
in the
one
woods
point.
over at Groton, and the Hatch family drove it at Bear Ridge after they built Bear Ridge. It was driven as a Flathead.
Hatch
So-
family from over
From
the hill.
Groton, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There was Ralph Hatch, Doug, or Tubby Hatch, they called him. His name is Dale. And then Doug, and then actually Brent Hatch drove this as his first car. And he learned how to drive on this.
Now, where did you
Flathead.
find the vehicle?
It was at Ralph Hatch's yard over there in Groton. It was on its side. It was in a sand pit and in the trees. And it had some of the body. It was very rusted. None of the doors were. It just had flat sheet metal. And rather than have all this stuff here. So, it was some work to get it right. And Harold and I found some new doors. And we put the doors on and obviously set it up the way he did at Thunder Road. And this car goes pretty good at Thunder Road. I actually won a race, a vintage race in this car just 2 years ago. And it went pretty well.
Now, would this be the drivetrain? Would this be the engine that they would have
No,
run?
well, yeah, this is a Flathead V8. It was the engines that they had for the Fords were all built from anywhere from 32 to 53, but this was a 48 Ford 59 AB engine, and that's what he had in it. And it wasn't the original engine, but one that he had rebuilt.
So he was competitive.
This guy here won 2 track champions and 2 milk bowls in this car.
Incredible.
So this
What
is a car.
year would that have been?
He won the milk bowl in '62 and then in '64. And
Fantastic.
the track championship in '64 and '65.
And would this be the interior that he was sitting in? And a big old Crown Victoria.
Yeah,
It looks like a Ford. Looks like a Ford 24-inch steering wheel.
Yeah, it's a big one, and yeah, he had a wheel that's the wheel that was on the car. So that's the one, and he said that was the wheel. So the seat was different. I bought the seat and put it in. That was all gone, and I put the floor in it. But frankly, it's the same body with new doors, and the roof was all rusted out here. I replaced all this, and
So we may see this down in the museum someday.
it was at Northeastern Museum, and when he died, Harold died in March of '17. He took it out, and I brought it up for service up at his home up in Plymouth.
Nice.
So, yeah, this he was, and I gave him the car. I mean, some summers I said, Harold, this is your car. They don't care about me. This is Harold Hannaford's car. You're in it, and I gave him the car to bring it around to the car show. So
Nice.
he loved it.
Very good.
He was pretty happy.
You know, that's a time in life when you can look back and just, I'm glad that you had that appreciation for what these guys, the entertainment that he gave everybody,
It was-
the excitement that they brought to the community, the effort that they put into these things, and they did it on a shoestring budget.
Certainly
They did
did.
it because they loved it and they were competitive, like the gentleman that owns 71 here.
Yeah.
Sports activities, and just when it gets into your blood, obviously it
It's-
becomes
yeah.
enjoyable.
It really does, David, and I'll tell you, even I went so far as to keep the old wheels. I could have gone and bought some new ones, but I took the dents out because these wheels were built by the racers, and I wanted to have the wheels that Harold built. And this one here, he put that rebar and the extra bead, to keep it from getting bent up easy.
Yeah.
I mean, and look at it inside here, because he had 2 brake pedals. He had Caterpillar D9 springs in the spring-loaded.
Is that what those are?
Yeah, he was ahead. No, this was they did the double shocks here.
Okay.
These are all Ford shocks. But what he did is he put the D9 spring in here, and this should be out here probably like this. And it was a recoil to the spring, both front and back, that he put in the car.
Now,
Because he didn't want it to bend up the frame.
So that was pretty innovative.
Darn right it was.
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Now this is your second car you brought today.
Yeah, this is my 13 car I found in the woods over in Williamstown. This race at Bear Ridge, when I found it, it was just cut off here. The only thing remaining was this, and I recognized it building models that this was the car because of this panel and the Shelby tubing, which is curved. All the other cars have square drive shaft roll cages, but Andy Cody, the guy that built this, had Shelby tubing, lightweight tubing, alloy tubing, heavy steel or cast iron.
How did you know that it was Ronnie's car?
From the curve
Because
and
of
the
the roll
Shelby
cage?
tubing, and from this, and from other things that I saw on the car. Like I knew it had aluminum floor because I made the models, and of course there was no body on. I found these doors. This is a Plymouth door. The other one's a Ford door. 34 Ford roof and a Model A deck, and just welding a little bit, and I tacked it all together. Made it look somewhat like a 32 3-window coupe.
So who was Ronnie to Thunder Road?
First track champion in 1960. He won. He's still considered one of the top winners at the racetrack. I forget how many wins he had there. Somewhere 27 or 8, somewhere in that vicinity. He won a lot of races, and that's all in the Flatheads and in the early when he had a Buick Regal or a Buick Skylark when he drove in the late model division in the back in the.
So he did make the graduation.
He did.
From the early into the late models.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
He did. Yeah. So this car was a lot harder to do because there was nothing left to it. I've actually replaced the front. This frame was all bent up. I had to do spend some money to put some new rails on it. This car was sold in '62 to Satchel Hunt, and it stayed white. It became number 60, and he won a lot of races in '63 and '4, and then it turned to number 64. And this car won the last Milk Bowl in 1965 with the number 64, white number 64 that Russ Ingerson drove in '65.
So this has got some good vibes.
This has got a good Thunder Road history right here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you preserved it because
you're welcome.
you know what? Going into the future, there's going to be a greater appreciation for what these guys went through and all that they did, and the end result that guys like you helped keep it alive. So we're here with Brian
Marble.
Okay, Marble.
And I got this car from down in Connecticut. It originally probably ran Pennsylvania, New Jersey. It's a dirt car, meaning that center steer, the transmission's between your legs, and the steering, and you sit in the center of the car, and they're just safer that way to run on dirt.
So who originally ran 60?
The original number 60 was Skip Easter, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And what I do every year is I change the car and the vinyl and everything to honor a person, usually alive, and that's why I go with the family this year to honor them, and we change it every July 1st of every year. So last year it was a different number.
Nice consideration. What's the history of this vehicle? Do you know its origin, who originally put this car together?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't know any of the history on the car.
So you got this as a memorial for drivers that you know that have been involved in the sport.
Yep.
And are you focused specifically on the individuals that would drive? This is a what? Modified chassis?
Yes.
Okay. And so do you focus in that specific area of drivers?
No. I focus on drivers that ran in Northeastern Speedway in Waterford, Vermont, and the track was open from 1959 to 66.
And so you found this vehicle, you said where?
In Connecticut.
In Connecticut.
Yep.
And you live in Vermont.
I live in Northfield, Vermont.
And so how was it that you found this vehicle in Connecticut?
Internet. Got talking with a guy. He was using the body off the car on his project. He wanted to get rid of the chassis because it's heavy, and I wanted a challenge. So I took on the challenge, and the body comes from Ellie's Farm Market and over in Northfield. It was over a bank in a brook with a tree on top of it. I only were able to save like the windows and a little bit of the back of the roof, and I just honor people that are still alive. So this gentleman is dead, but I'm honoring his family because all the effort that they had to sacrifice for him to race. The first gentleman that I represented, he is a Marine and he's 94 years old, and it was 4 years ago, and his number was number 19. It was 69. So his name is in the roof above. You sit in the car and his name's on the roof of the car. And so the first year was a driver. The second year was a car owner. He was 93 years old. He's passed away last year. He developed racing at Thunder Road, racing in Northeastern, racing in Mallett's Bay, racing in Northfield.
And so when you say developed,
he is a car owner, so he would have a car that he would take and different drivers would drive it.
Okay.
So I wanted to represent a driver.
Just knowing that he participated, it made it possible for a competitive driver to get into a vehicle and race.
Yes.
So he was obviously passionate about the sport, made a huge investment because these are not inexpensive toys.
Right.
These are very expensive toys and it takes a lot of effort. And so he was appreciative of what these guys were hoping to do and what they were capable. Did he have any winning drivers?
Oh yeah, Johnny Gamel that ran at Thunder Road, which won several track championships. He ran at Northeastern, won a lot of races there, won the first track championship in 1959 there in his car. Yeah, he had a lot of really good drivers. Nice. And it wasn't just Johnny, it was
So he otherwise would go unrecognized. Is he represented in some way down at the museum?
Nope.
That's unfortunate.
No.
Maybe you should make a recommendation that they would have consideration for those individuals that made that investment, because it does help keep the whole story alive. Because without his participation in owning cars, these guys wouldn't have the opportunity to be a track champion.
Oh, definitely.
And so here you are honoring him and his family, and that's great, Brian. I appreciate you coming
over
here.
No problem. Thank you.
It's nice.
But they understood where the edge was. Yeah, I know. I don't. I don't want to know where the edge is.
It's just, you got to